is what I'm thinking. Okay, let's get fired up here for Tome of the GM. David's got a question in chat. We'll answer that. Where does the evil or helpful dragon show up, plan a double cross, and find the resources to help her kill the first bad guy? Well, what I'd tell you is, and I know you're half joking there, but one of the interesting things about it is, and Sly Flourish talks about this a lot, careful with the double cross. So, once somebody double crosses you, do you ever trust them again? No, right? In this game, the DM, you are the face for all the NPCs, whether you want to be or not, right? And so if the DM double crosses the party, it just makes it really hard for them to trust anybody ever again, any of the NPCs, because they're looking at the same face and hearing the same voice. And so human nature is just, I don't trust that guy anymore. When in actuality, what you should be, like, you should be making a delineation between each of the characters and what it is that they do. So for specifically TTRPGs, you've got to be really careful double crossing your party, because once you do, they're not going to trust any of your PCs, much less like want to work with them. They're going to want to only work with their party, you know? And then you get into a spot where it's real adversarial between GMs and the party, and you don't want to do that. So maybe no double cross is what I'm thinking. And then let's get to our Reddit questions here. And as always, we'll happily take any other questions put into chat as well. This one from Kothmac on R3D6. This is generally like character advice and stuff like that. Tier 2 to 3 light cleric tactics. Playing a light cleric through tiers 2 and 3 in an upcoming campaign, which I'm not sure exactly tier 2s and 3s what he means by that, but I assume lower level is what he's kind of saying. Through an upcoming campaign with a fighter, paladin, artificer, wizard, and rogue. What are some of the ways I can make the most of the cleric kit, spells, etc.? Kit is an interesting way to describe it. I don't know that I've ever heard that before, but I think I know what he means. I've played a fighter and a wizard before, but never looked into the cleric before this character. Please leave all your best tips for me so I can be the best cleric ever for my party. Love the enthusiasm. So here's my response. I'll kind of go over it here. So at low levels as a spellcaster, especially the healer, it's really tough because you don't want to blow any spell slots on anything but healing, because you never know when a fight is going to be so hard that you have to kind of heal your way through it. So that always makes it tough for clerics, because you're constantly trying to keep a couple spell slots in your back pocket for an in case of emergency. That being said, there are lots of things that you can do as a cleric, and I think he specifically said light cleric. Yeah, a light cleric. There are lots of things that you can do to really help the party. In fact, and I play cleric probably more than any other class. Cleric is one of the times I have the most fun because of its utility that it has through its spell list. The reason I end up playing cleric so much is because nobody ever wants to be the healer and nobody ever wants to be the tank, right? Everybody wants to be the damage dealer. And so you end up with no tanks in a party and no healers in a party. And the best way to do both is to build a cleric and take the heavy armor proficiency. So I've played a lot of clerics, and here is what I'd say. So at low levels, which I think is what you mean by tier 2 and 3. You aren't going to want to burn too many spell slots. So you have spells left for healing, cure wounds, and healing word. But here are the things that I would say. First, Fairy Fire. So Fairy Fire is a light cleric spell. It's a specialty that they get. Other clerics don't get it. But it's an incredible spell. You might want to be careful burning a spell slot. Most people just use it to see invisibility. But what they don't think about is the advantage that it gives your fighters. So for 10 turns, you outline enemies in like this Fairy Fire, this sparkle, and it gives advantage on all attacks against them for 10 turns. So if you're playing with a paladin, a fighter, and a rogue, specifically the rogue, you give the rogue sneak attack every turn without having to do anything. They don't have to worry about I'm going to hide and then pop out and then hide again. They don't have to worry about any of that. They have advantage on the attack. They get sneak attack damage. And your fighter and your paladin are going to be thankful for that too. Your paladin specifically for the smites, your fighter for if they have multiple attacks. I mean, advantage is huge. It also goes outside of their turns. So your rogue can proc sneak attack on his turn, obviously. But if you look at the wording, it says once per turn, not once per round. So if they make an opportunity attack, or if the Battle Master fighter can give them a second attack, the rogue can proc sneak attack several times. And if you put Fairy Fire on them each time they attack, whether it's an opportunity attack or not, they have advantage. They can use their sneak attack damage. And so it's a great way to buff your party in terms of helping them out, having them hit. It's kind of a small radius. It's hard to get a lot of creatures in there. But if you are that clustered in, with mostly melee fighters like it sounds like this party is, it's a great way to do it. The go-to answer here for everybody is going to be Shield of Faith. Shield of Faith is one of the best spells in the game, in my opinion. It's a flat +2 to armor class. It is a unique armor class buff, so it stacks with most other armor class buffs. And there aren't many buffs in the game that are just take +2 to AC. It's only a bonus action to cast, and you only need a first level spell slot to use it. So by the time you get to level 2 or 3 or 4, you should be willing to burn one spell slot for 10 minutes of +2 AC. Only real downside to it is that it takes your concentration. But if you're just casting healing spells aside from it, perfect to concentrate on for your tank and give them a +2 to AC. Can be a huge help. Guiding Bolt. Guiding Bolt is your damage spell that also gives advantage on the next attack. So if you are going against the boss and you all just kind of look at each other and say, burn him down, do not take a turn off, just keep hitting him. So you don't want to waste a turn on Fairy Fire, you can hit him with a Guiding Bolt, still do damage, and give advantage on the next attack, which hopefully is your rogue, and they can sneak attack damage him. So it's a way to just help out your party in that sense. The light cleric feature for their channel divinity is Warding Flare. It's a great feature. I wish you had more uses of it, but you can use it to protect your frontliners from like really big hits. So what it does is you use your reaction to impose disadvantage anybody within 30 feet. So as a light cleric, I would try to be, 15, 20 feet back from the fight. I don't want to be right up on top of it, but then I can use my Warding Flare, create disadvantage for the DM, and maybe save my guys on the front line from taking a significant amount of damage. Bane and Bless are two underrated spells in my opinion. There's a whole class built around that spell, and it's called Bard. Like Bardic Inspiration is a D6, this is a D4. but like this I get every turn, and the bard only has so many uses of their bardic inspiration. Bless and Bane are way better than people think they are. They both require concentration, but you can pick, do you want to buff your party or do you want to hurt the other party? Now, for Bless, you're going to hit on attacks more often, right? Because it's attacks, saving throws, or checks. For Bane, they're going to hit less. So you have to kind of decide at the beginning of the fight, if you have both of them prepared, you have to kind of decide at the beginning of the fight if you think they're going to be super strong and you need to nerf their hits a little bit, or if you just want to try to burn them down as quick as possible, so you want to bless your allies so you are hitting more. So they do different things, right? There's different advantages to them, even though they're similar spells. So, but I think they're great spells in terms of buffing your party. They're really good. And then the last one I'd say is Sanctuary. Some DMs really hate this spell, and they will hate spell block it by making it less effective in certain ways. So I might just check with your DM to see how they feel about the Sanctuary spell. But essentially, like, you can use it where you leave your tank behind and everybody else in the party runs away. And as you're running away, you cast Sanctuary on the tank. And then the tank just calmly walks out of there and leaves. You know what I mean? Because nobody can hit them. So there's a lot of interesting ways to use Sanctuary, if you ask me. I think it's a really good spell and an opportunity to help and buff your party. So those would be my suggestions at low level about ways that the cleric can be the best cleric for the party. But in actuality, I mean, you're probably the healer, right? Like the paladin's the off healer. The wizard might have taken some healing stuff, but not likely. So chances are you're the healer of the party, and that's going to be more help than you know. They'll grow to love you, I promise. So that's my suggestion there. Okay, up next. Is it ever a good idea to start a campaign with a surprise? This is from some random Abaddon. In DM's DM Academy, our DM Academy. I've played many campaigns where the DM did not disclose some important information to the players at the beginning of the campaign because they wanted it to be a plot twist. Once, he didn't tell us we were traveling 50 years into the future. Another, the plot requires us to make a pact with the devil, not for a soul, but still a pact with the devil. There were other instances as well, but what unites them all is the fact that it never, ever worked out. Players have been prepared and excited for a specific format, made characters, prepared backstories, created builds, and then lost it all of a sudden to something they couldn't see coming. This taught me to never make plot twists in my campaigns, at least not at the very beginning of one. I wonder, however, if that's always the case. Do you have a similar experience? Have you ever done a prepared plot twist and had it work out well? Well, the thing we read you earlier today was a prepared plot twist right at the beginning. They started in jail. And I do that from time to time in my DMing. It has not always gone bad. You have to be very mindful of how you do it. But to have no plot twists in your game whatsoever would make it a really boring game. So what are we doing? So I kind of said being forced to sign a pact with the devil, if I was playing a good cleric, it would just be something I simply wouldn't do. And I understand them saying like that is a tough way to start a campaign. I get it. 50 years into the future, it really affects your backstory and maybe your motivations, any reason that you would have had to go out that had to do with like family or your guild or whatever. Like half of them are dead and the other half are, 70 years old if they're alive still. So for some of the races that live really long times, like elf, maybe it makes sense, but it is a tough get. I understand that. So I'm okay with having a fun reveal to start. I'm okay with having a plot twist. It's better to me to have something like that where you are having the party come together in a meaningful way rather than you meet at a bar. You go to the tavern, you go to the call board. Boring. I hate that. So I would rather you play with fire a little bit and put a plot twist at the beginning to tie everybody together and give them a reason that they fight together with each other than you just meet at a tavern. I would rather you take the chances and fail than be boring and bland, I guess is what I would say. So I've had it work out before. I've had it where it didn't work out, where I thought it was kind of a bummer. If you're going to do something like that, and I say this in here, it just make sure that you're informing your party as they create their character that like something is going to happen. And you don't have to tell them exactly what, but like, I would, if it's something that's going to affect their backstory and their character and how it plays, yeah, I would try to let them know some hints about it at the table in a session 0 before we get to bang, here's your big plot twist. Sorry about that. And so if you want to do the big reveal in session 0 and then let them build the characters afterward, you can do that. That's a way to do a plot twist reveal, and then they're making their characters with the information. Or you can have them make their characters in session 0 and just hint at like, hey, listen, you don't want any good clerics in here because it's not going to work with the story that I have planned out, which I'd prefer not to do, but it's the only way I would do something like what the OP is saying here. So, okay. Rogue Assassin Surprise Mechanic Question. This is from Dermillion in DM Academy again. It's a pretty long post, so I won't go through and read the whole thing, but I'll read this top part here. So my party's rogue has the assassin subclass, and I hate the surprise rules in 5e, so F that. But he will be missing out on the auto crit he would get from that, so I thought about giving it to him if he stays unseen and not discovered during combat. So a party of 4 will be going into the jungle of Cholt this coming Saturday. The other 3 players are kind of reckless and tend to just run into trouble, and thus there will never be a surprise round as stated. I hate that rule and how it works. And then he lays out a couple scenarios about how he would still provide the assassin critical hit for his player by like sneaking around and remaining unseen. But then he also goes on to say that he foresees problems with it or has had problems with it because like the undead that they fight have a really low perception. And so he can just keep hiding and keep getting the assassinate. And you can't allow that. Sorry. I love the assassinate feature. I hate that they took it out in 2024. It was my favorite rogue feature, and I thought it was exactly what a rogue should be. So, like, it is the quintessential rogue. For those of you that don't know what the assassinate feature is, at level 3, if you took assassin, the only thing that you got, if you took assassin as your subclass, was you got an automatic critical on anybody who is surprised, and the definition for that is most easily put as hasn't taken an action in combat yet. So if you have an incredibly high dexterity bonus, which you should as a rogue, if you take a feat like alert, you can get your character to the top of that initiative order and then attack anybody who hasn't taken an attack yet, and you get an automatic critical, which means not only is your weapon die doubled, but then all your sneak attack die get doubled too. And you can put an incredible amount of damage on somebody. It was a little bit overpowered, but you only get it in that one scenario. When you surprise the other guy. So you can't be surprised. You have to roll well in initiative, and like it's tough taking a subclass where that's the only thing that you get. But if that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to play your character, it's an awesome subclass. And I hate that they took it out in 2024 rules. They made it so you just get your, I think, proficiency bonus damage if you do that, which is like nothing compared to what it was before. I'd say you need to come up with surprise rules that you like better. If your problem is the surprise rules, don't ruin the subclass, which is why he's here, right? Like, he's asking this question because he doesn't want to ruin this subclass feature for his rogue. But your problem isn't with the subclass feature. Your problem is with how surprise works. So home rule, how the surprise works to make it so it's comfortable for you and they get to keep their subclass. So I told him I would just say anyone who hasn't acted in combat yet gets the auto crit. Everything after that is just regular sneak attack, which is still pretty powerful. I mean, the amount of dice you get to add as a sneak attack is still good. You don't have to double it to make the character fun to play, right? Like that, you're already getting extra damage dice where other classes don't get that. So sneak attack is still pretty powerful. Yes, I know the rules on surprise suck, but it's a clear delineation allowing your rogue to use their subclass feature while not making them overpowered if they have expertise in stealth. And you likely would, right? As a rogue, you'd likely take your proficiency in stealth, and then when you're going through and picking 2 skills to get expertise in, 85% of rogues pick stealth as one of their things. So if you're making them roll stealth checks to hide and everybody has to roll a perception check to see them, they're going to have the advantage. And so if you give it to them every time they remain unseen, they're just going to turn into an absolute force. It's way too OP. You can't, you can't do it. So I would leave it the way it is. I like the subclass, but I wouldn't change it. Okay, also from our DM Academy, this is Broken Image 321. How many factions or NPCs is too many? I'm pulling together an idea for a game with a heavy focus on faction and politics. Current plan is PCs are trying to keep things orderly during a grand festival, but all the PCs have their own plot or plots, ranging from smile and wave to make it look like an accident. Excuse me. The challenge will be choosing which faction / plot is most dangerous and taking care of the biggest threats first. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I think I understand where he's going. This is my first time really playing with factions like this, though, so I'm a little nervous about how this will all work. In particular, I'm wondering how many factions / NPCs is too many for the PCs and or myself to keep track of playing around with. For reference, at present, I'm imagining somewhere between 4 and 6 factions and 2 to 6 major NPCs, arranged roughly around 3 different ideological axes. I think that's a good number. But basically what I said to him, too many comes when you can no longer keep track or keep them straight and remember which is which. You need to be able to improv them into the storyline and weave them in without hesitation. So once you have to look it up, you have too many. I think the number that you have is good. As long as you can have them memorized. And, it goes to an overall question about the world, right? Like how many NPCs, how many factions. That, I think, relies solely on whatever the DM's skill level is and how good their memory is. Because if you can keep track of 20 different NPCs, then put 20 different NPCs in there. It's going to make the world feel more full. It's going to make it feel more real. And so I don't think there's any problem with putting 100 NPCs in there if you can remember them all. But you have to be able to remember them all. Now, if they get overwhelmed and they can't remember them all, that's actually okay, right? Like, that's what the real world is. How many people do you meet every day? And same thing with the factions. You need to be able to clearly delineate what they're there for, why they're important, and then be able to use that to weave them into the story at several spots without any kind of hesitation or anything like that. So as long as you can remember them, build as many as you want is what I would say to that. Okay, Tome of the GM, last one here. If you've got anything you want, feel free to drop it in the chat and we can talk about it. This one from Simply, again in DM Academy. Non-TPKs, total party kills if you don't know. Lo and behold, you've accidentally TPK'd your entire party. What can happen so that you don't have to go, welp, I guess that's that then. I'm going home early. See you next time. New campaign, new characters. Tough. I mean, a TPK is a TPK. And they shouldn't be taken lightly, right? Like, you shouldn't just be doing it as a whim. But if there is a TPK, it is what it is. But you can put in certain safeguards to try to make sure that that doesn't happen unless it's truly deserving of a TPK. So here's what he says. We all know full well that accidents happen. Sometimes you misjudge the amount of damage your homebrew monstrosity can either dish out or take. The players themselves make a bunch of mistakes during combat, or the dice just say, these fellows are dying today. Kind of happened to me recently as a player. I got crit by a zombie and then said, there's no way they crit me twice in a row, right? And then went for a risky move, getting hit with an AOO, attack of opportunity. And guess who got crit the second time? Yes. I mean, that kind of stuff can happen. What plot contrivance can a GM use in such a scenario so as to keep the party composition but continue the story? Perhaps you have some sort of specific examples, your GMs or yourself employed. For example, I'm talking about getting saved by an NPC, a deity perhaps, getting caught alive for interrogation later, etc., etc. And so, the first thing I'd say, and it's the first thing I'd say here is, what was the discussion like at session 0? Did you warn them that TPKs are real and can happen, that character death is likely and can happen? Or are there expectations that this is heroic fantasy and that they don't die? You have to, I think, lay that out with your party at the session 0, because otherwise you could have really upset players. They really like this character. They don't want to change characters. And, if you didn't make it clear that that is something that's possible, finding a way to kind of soften the blow there might be necessary. I lay out at all my session 0s that, like, death is real. You can die. Be careful. Make good decisions. Because if you make bad ones, you're going to die. So I said, I think this depends on expectations at the table. What was your session 0 like? Are your players accepting that death is real and permanent? I think you touched on a couple ways that you can intervene as a DM to save them in the moment. Elves marching into Helm's Deep or Rohan coming to the aid of Gondor rings here. Same with the Knights of the Vale in Game of Thrones. Sorry for the spoilers. Also, needing info from them is a good way to keep them alive and maybe throw them in jail. But, I think those are good examples of storytelling that makes it dramatic, but still you have that moment of triumph in the face of near death. And so those are some of the things that I would point to say, like, this is a normal storyline trope. And it's not just you throwing this plot device in there. Lots of writers use it all the time. So for my suggestions, I said you can also think about the villain and their motivation. Does the villain maybe run once a couple of players are down, knowing that they can get away while the PCs take care of their down party members? Can the villain get something that they are trying to get or achieve while they know that their main hurdle can't stop them, right? So would they, now that a couple party members are down, like, okay, I'm going to go get the key now, right? And so I stop attacking the party. A key, a relic, anything they can accomplish because the party isn't standing in their way. Maybe take a city, wipe out a guild. Would a devil or deity have interest in stopping the villain, right? So maybe that's your intervention. That's where my head would go. A punishment for the downed party, but not a total wipe. So, it's TPKs are a real dangerous thing as a DM. You never want to do it. Most players, like, you can find a real sicko group, and I would be a member of a sicko group like this that is like, yeah, murder my character. I don't care. I'll play a new one next week, but I want it to feel real. I want death to feel like it's possible. And a lot of D&D tables, you don't have that. We want to build a character that lives forever and I fall in love with and is my favorite thing ever and blah, blah, blah. And so you just have to be real careful if you do that, how you're going to adjudicate a TPK at the table when you've set the example that, like, oh, these are our friends, blah, blah, blah. We love these characters. It makes it hard to kill them off. So you have to have those expectations set at the table, and I would suggest you do it in session 0. So that's it. That is Tome of the let's start again. So that's it. That's Tome of the GM, episode 3. As always, if you have questions or anything that you want me to read, look at, offer my opinion to, or you just want to share it with somebody, you can send it to me in the DMs at Rob T Radio on any of the social medias, or, directly to me via YouTube or Twitch, whatever. Happy to take a look and if you want my thoughts, I'll give them to you. So thanks everybody for joining us. Don't forget we do D&D every Wednesday on YouTube and on Twitch.